Hi guys, welcome to Sourcing Classes. This is Hima Hegde presenting before you a video session on the anthropology related current affairs. To begin with, let us look at the topics under light for the week. The week as in 24th of May to 29th of May. So here are the topics, that is archaeology. These are the subtopics under archaeology, then the tribal affairs, followed by physical or biological anthropology, continuing with the same, and then the socio-cultural anthropology, under which we have only one topic this week, that is the Jajmani system. The detailed elaboration of each of these subtopics mentioned will be found in the A&D document, that is the Anthropology News Diary document, which is uploaded on a regular basis in the official Sourcing Classes website, that is www.sourcingclasses.com. Moving on, here we have the topics under light for today. So firstly, we have the Sheldon's somatotypes. Sheldon's somatotypes. Now this has been a recurring question in the UPSC examination. Then we have the carb-loaded Neanderthals. This holds significance in the evolutionary topics. Then we have two tribes under focus, that is the Amara tribe and the Jarva tribe. This is an Indian tribe that is in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and then the Ethiopian tribe. So first we have the Sheldon's somatotype. Somatotype is nothing but the physical structure or the physical body type. So Sheldon's somatotypes. We have Sheldon basically was a American psychologist. So he has classified the body types into basically three groups, that is ectomorphs, endomorphs and mesomorph. As you can see here, ectomorph, mesomorph and endomorph. So we'll look into each of them. Firstly, we have the ectomorph. Now ectomorph is a physical type tending towards linearity as determined by the physical classification system developed by W.H. Sheldon. Although the classification by Sheldon system is not absolute, a person is classified as an ectomorph if ectomorphy predominates over endomorphy and mesomorphy in his body build. The extreme ectomorph has a thin face, as you can see in this picture. The extreme ectomorph has a thin face with a high forehead, receding chin, narrow chest and abdomen. As you can see, narrow chest area and a narrow abdomen with thin arms and legs. Thin arms and thin legs. They are rather narrow, and the narrow heart. A very little body fat and a very little muscle mass, but a large skin surface and a large nervous system. If well fed, if the ectomorphic person is well fed, he does not gain weight easily. In case he does, he will still be considered an ectomorph, only overweight. Moving on, we have the endomorphs. As you can see in the picture, the endomorphs. So firstly, coming to the endomorph, it is a human physical type tending towards roundness, that is in the body structure. Roundness as determined by W.H. Sheldon. The extreme endomorph body has as nearly globular as humanly possible. Globular is again nothing but roundness or the spherical shape that is seen in the physical body type. Now the endomorphs tend to have a round head, a round abdomen. As you can see here, the abdominal area is also globular. Round head followed by a round abdomen, large internal organs, short arms and legs comparatively, and slender wrists and ankles. Under normal conditions, the endomorphic individual has a great deal of body fat, but he is simply a fat person. If starved, he remains still an endomorphic person. Under normal conditions, the endomorphic individual has a great deal of body fat, to repeat the same, but he is simply a fat person. If starved, he remains an endomorph, only thinner. So moving on, here we have the mesomorph. So we have discussed the endomorph, the ectomorph, and lastly we have the mesomorph. Now mesomorph is a human physical type that is marked by greater than average muscle development or the muscular development as determined by W.H. Sheldon. The physical type is nothing but the somatotype. Although the Sheldon system of classification does not make absolute distinctions between the types, as mentioned earlier, a person is classed as a mesomorph if mesomorphy predominates over endomorphy and ectomorphy. So coming to that, the extreme mesomorph has a square and a massive head. As you can see, it's a massive head. They have broad and muscular chest and also the shoulders, a large heart, heavily muscled arms and legs, and minimal body fat. He tends to develop muscle very easily. His muscular development can be usually distinguished from the one that has developed his muscles through bodybuilding exercises. So that's about the Sheldon somatotypes. Moving on, we have the carb-loaded Neanderthals. A new study from the bacteria collected from the Neanderthal teeth. The bacteria that were collected from the fossils of the Neanderthal, the teeth of the Neanderthal, shows that our close cousins, that is the Neanderthals, ate a lot of roots, nuts or other starchy foods. That is, they were basically loaded on carbs, that is the carbohydrates. And they dramatically altered the type of bacteria in their mouths. The finding suggests that our ancestors had adapted to eating lots of starch by at least 6 lakh years ago. 6 lakh years ago, that is about the same time as they needed more sugars. Now this is important, as they needed more sugars for the big expansion of their brains. The work suggests that the ancestors of both humans and Neanderthals were cooking lots of starchy foods. They were cooking lots of starchy foods at least 6 lakh years ago, and they had already adapted to eating a lot of starchy plants long before the invention of agriculture, that is about 10,000 years ago. Now the invention of agriculture is about 10,000 years ago. So the brains of our ancestors, that is the brains of the Neanderthals, doubled in size. They got doubled in size nearly between 2 million and 7 lakh years ago. Researchers have long credited better stone tools and cooperative hunting. As the early human beings got better at killing animals and processing meat, they ate higher quality diet. They ate a higher quality meat, and that gave them more energy for the rapid growth of their hungrier brains. The starchy plants gathered by many living hunter-gatherers are an excellent source of glucose. Now to figure out whether the oral bacteria track changes in diet or the environment, a large international team looked at the oral bacteria stuck to the teeth of the Neanderthals. Now pre-agriculture modern humans that lived more than 10,000 years ago, chimps, gorillas and monkeys, all of their samples were collected. The researchers analyzed billions of DNA fragments from long dead bacteria preserved in the teeth of 124 individuals. One was a Neanderthal who lived 1 lakh years ago, nearly 1 lakh years ago, and in a cave which produced the oldest oral microbiome genome constructed to the date. The presence of the strep bacteria that consume the sugar on the teeth of the Neanderthals and the ancient modern human beings, but not chimps, show that they were eating more starchy food, the researchers conclude. Finding the streptococci on the teeth of the ancient humans and Neanderthals, streptococci is nothing but a bacteria on the teeth of the Neanderthals and human beings, suggested that they inherited these microbes from their common ancestors who lived more than 6 lakh years ago. Now the study offers a new way to detect major shifts in the diet in case of the Neanderthals. It reveals how much they have developed on plants or how much they were depending on the plants. Moving on, we have the Amara tribes. Now the Amara are the politically and culturally dominant tribes, politically and culturally dominant ethnic group of Ethiopia. Of Ethiopia. They are located primarily in the central highland plateau of Ethiopia. In terms of the total Ethiopian population, however, the Amara are a numerical minority. They are a minority. The national population has usually been placed between 14 and 22 million. It is generally estimated that the Amara, together with the closely related Tigray, constitute only one third of the total population, one third of this total population. This as in the total 14 to 22 million. One of the most recent estimates gives the number of native speakers of Amharic. Amharic is the language that the Amara speak. The language of Amara as basically 7 lakh. As basically 7 lakh. Their national clothes are basically white, whether the shawls and light blankets worn over shoulders by the men or white dresses and wraps worn by the ladies. Life in Amara farming society is quite hard. Many Amara live in the harsh and stark mountains, easy to defend but making it difficult to travel and gain provisions. The men in the fields, the women around the house and the children at home watching sheep all work really hard. They work very hard. The fields are plowed with oxen, seeds are sown and harvested by hand, and the harvest is threshed by feet of the animals. In home, the primary cooking fuel is the dried dung of the farm animals. So basically nothing is wastage. The staple food of the Amara tribes is called as injera bee wort. As you can see in the picture, there is a depiction of the same thing. This is the platter of injera bee wort. Injera is made from tiny indigenous grain called teff, which is endemic to Ethiopia. Wort is a pepper sauce that can be made from beans or meat. The whole process of making these foods is difficult and time consuming. Impure drinking water and deforestation are their major concerns or the issues. The children from the age of 5 or 6 spend their days watching the family animals, mainly sheep, as discussed before. Increasingly, children are able to attend the public schools. Though this is mainly for only a half a day since the schools are very crowded. Only over 10% of the population has access to the all-weather roads. Settlements are typically built on or near the hilltops as a protection against flooding. Farms are terraced on the hillsides to prevent erosion and hold water for the crops. The hamlet is usually patrilineal, that is the male descent, the father side descent. It is usually patrilineal with sons building their homes in the father's location. Girls normally marry at the age of 14 and the groom is 3 to 5 years older. Most marriages are negotiated by the two families with a civil ceremony sealing the contract. A priest may be present, and for a priest, before the priest, for the normal population, divorce is allowed, and there is also a concept of temporary marriage. The woman is paid housekeeper's wages and is not eligible for inheritance, but children of marriage are legally recognized and qualify for inheritance. And the priests, coming to the marriages of the priests, they are allowed to marry, but they are not eligible for divorce or remarriage. Moving on, we have the Jarawa tribes. The Jarawa tribe. Today, approximately 400 members of the nomadic Jarawa tribe live in the group of 40 to 50 people in the Chaddas. That is, as they call their homes. Like most tribal people who live self-sufficiently on their ancestral lands, the Jarawa continue to thrive and their numbers are steadily growing. They basically hunt pig and turtle and fish with bows and arrows in the coral-fringed reefs for crabs and fish. including the striped catfish eel and other toothed ponyfish. They also gather fruits. Alongside these animals, they also gather fruits, wild roots, tubers, and honey. The bows are made from the choy wood, which does not grow throughout the Jarawa territory. The Jarawa often have to travel long distances. They have to travel long distances in order to collect it. Both Jarawa men and women collect honey from lofty trees. During the honey collection, the members of the group will sing songs to express their delight. The honey collector will chew the sap of the leaves of a bee repellent plant. Of a bee repellent plant. A bee repellent plant such as the oak walnut, which they will then spray with their mouths at the bees to keep them away. A study of their nutritional status came out as optimal. The nutritional status of the Jarawa tribe was said to be optimal. They have detailed knowledge of more than 150 plant and 350 animal species. In 1998, a few Jarawas started to emerge from their forest for the first time without their bows and arrows, to visit the nearby towns and settlements. In 1990, the local authorities revealed their long-term plan to settle the Jarawa in two villages with an economy based on fishery, suggesting that hunting and gathering could be their sports. Following a vigorous campaign by survival and Indian organizations, the resettlement plan was abandoned, and in 2004, the authority announced a radical new policy. That is, the Jarawa would be allowed to choose their own future, and that outside intervention in their lives would be kept to minimum. This was an enormous success for the international and Indian campaign. So that's about it for today's session. Hope you found it informative. Thank you.